Welcome to another episode of The People of Private Capital. In this episode, I'll be talking with Kavita Patel. Kavita is a principal at MUUS Climate Partners. They're a New York-based, early-stage, climate tech-focused venture capital firm. And really, we covered a lot of ground. We covered Kavita's background, how she got involved in, not just in the venture capital sector, but more specifically in the climate and sustainability sector of venture capital. We talked about what it's like to be a woman in venture capital. We're all very familiar with the stories of underrepresentation of women, of people of color, that equality and diversity is not really well represented when it comes to the private capital sector. So we'll talk about her personal experiences there. We'll talk about some of the trends that are happening in climate tech and in the broader sustainability sector. We'll also be talking about their latest fund, Convergence Fund 2, some of the investments that are coming out of that, as well as some of the portfolio companies that they have. So I think a really interesting, well-rounded conversation. Hopefully you get a lot out of it. I certainly did. It was interesting for me. I have a personal interest in climate tech, but it was really interesting to hear firsthand from somebody who's at the forefront of investing in those early stage companies, the kinds of trends that are emerging, and indeed the very positive progress that's being made as a result of that. So hope you find it interesting. Please subscribe, recommend it to any of your friends in the private capital sector, to founders, or indeed to anybody who may just be interested in getting involved in the private capital sector. We'd be delighted to have them as part of our audience. And with that, I'll introduce Kavita. Well, Kavita, it's great to have you on the podcast. Appreciate you taking time to join us from New York. As I mentioned at the outset, Kavita is a principal at MUUS Climate Partners based in New York. And we're delighted to welcome you to the podcast.
Absolutely, Ferdinand. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, so Kavita, I was very interested to look at your background. As I mentioned in the introduction there, you came from really NYU Stern educational background, spent some time at BlackRock, moved into climate tech in a number of different capacities before spending time at MUUS Climate Partners. But I'm interested, just by way of background for the audience, to learn a little bit about how you were attracted to the space. It's an interesting intersection between finance and sustainability / climate tech. So interested to just get a sense from you personally, what influenced you and kind of what your path was to where you are today as a principal at MUUS.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, I've always been interested in sustainable development, and I think that really stems from being the child of immigrants. My mother's from Thailand, my father's from India, but born and raised in Tanzania. And I was fortunate enough at NYU to have work experience in emerging markets at the Stock Exchange of Thailand and also in Shanghai. And there I really learned the importance of the financial system in fueling growth and flourishing economies. And I also knew that climate change was really changing the very systems of energy, of transportation that is so core to the backbone that economies need to flourish. And so that's what really led me to BlackRock. I wanted to better understand financial markets and how investors really think and make decisions. And in the context of natural disasters in the United States at the time, Hurricane Harvey, for example, California wildfires, which we're still hearing about, my insurance clients started asking, how can we build in climate considerations to our investment portfolios? And so I really jumped on that opportunity, which snowballed from one thing to the other. And I was working on green bond mandates. I was working on impact measurement for renewables deployment on the infrastructure side, as well as things like, is this portfolio, if it was the whole world, aligned with a 2-degree warming scenario or not? And how can we adjust it to do so? So I think I followed a path that was always along the sustainable development line, and it just sort of honed into climate change as the biggest opportunity and also issue for my generation.
Yeah. So has sustainability just at a personal level always been important to you, or is this something that's over time as you've been exposed to it, grew in importance from a career perspective? Or
Yeah, I always think that, I'm fortunate to have opportunities being born in the place that I am. And I've always wondered, what really determines how successful, how much someone can flourish in their life. And for me, um, we should have a quality of opportunity wherever we are. And so what's the way that I can contribute to that world? And in this case, it's in order to flourish in a warming environment, we need to make sure that we are mitigating and adapting to climate change. And that's kind of been my North Star for my career.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's certainly an interesting learning ground at BlackRock. So you were working with insurers and financial institutions on their kind of institutional investments. Is that
Yep,
accurate?
exactly.
Yeah.
So we would do strategic asset allocations, looking across public and private markets and do analyses on, how is this property and casualty insurer allocated versus the industry at large.
Right. Right. Very good. Um, and so as you progressed in your career, you moved from BlackRock, you went back to to MIT, I guess, to study for your MBA before moving into MUUS. And so, can you talk to me about the exposure that you had? I understand you had additional studies around sustainability at MIT. How that transitioned to your time at MUUS?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to MIT because I knew I wanted to focus on early stage investing within private markets. I felt that, BlackRock is a fantastic mainstreamer, but once you get to a certain size, it's just hard to move the ship, turn the ship, so to say. And I felt that earlier stage is where the bold and innovative ideas were happening that could really move the needle. And
Yeah.
so MIT is known for science and entrepreneurship, and that's where I decided to attend for business school with a focus on sustainability. And I had the opportunity to work with several startups and understand their growth journey, typical pitfalls, as well as work with several funds within the climate space and figure out where I really wanted to be. And serendipitously, I met MUUS Climate Partners through that process because the firm has a very strong relationship with MIT. Three of us on the team are MIT alum. We have a partnership with the MIT Sustainability Initiative and a think tank called Climate Interactive to bring the science of climate solutions to political and business leaders. It's completely free. It's called the En-ROADS model.
Right.
John Kerry, who is the U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, actually came to MIT while I was there to learn about the model. And my colleagues at MUUS have personally presented this to over 250 governors, senators, and policymakers. And so I really loved that the firm was grounded in the best available science and had kind of a systems understanding of what could really move the needle on keeping us under the 2 degrees warming target.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly, it's John is tremendous advocate for just climate change. I guess climate action globally. So it's that must have been incredible. And so it's an interesting segue to MUUS. So for people who don't know MUUS, can you give a little bit of an introduction into who they are? Founded by Michael Sonnenfeld of people may know Michael from Tiger 21, obviously, but just an introduction to the company and maybe let's say the focus or investment thesis of the company.
Definitely. So I'm fortunate as an investor at MUUS to now spend all of my time thinking about how companies can scale fast enough to decarbonize our global economy by 2050. That is the overarching goal. MUUS Climate Partners is an early stage venture capital firm, and we are investing at the convergence of decarbonization and advanced technology. And we're really seeking early stage companies that are leveraging technology to scale in a capital efficient manner. This can be applying machine learning to diesel fuel efficiency for trains. It can be advanced materials science for heat reflecting windows. It can be proprietary thermal controls for zero emissions hot water heating and air heating of your home. So it really spreads across all aspects of our life. And I think our edge really comes down to the team. You mentioned Michael Sonnenfeld, who is a serial entrepreneur in the real estate area at the start. He also was the chairman of a private, then took public solar company during Clean Tech 1.0, and so many lessons learned from that. Team members have advanced climate policy through the En-ROADS model. One of our advisors is Jesse Jenkins, who is very involved in advising on and reporting out impacts of the U.S.'s landmark Inflation Reduction Act legislation. And we've also led corporate initiatives around decarbonization at the municipal level, within the auto industry, and also within finance. So because of this unique business, academic, and policy network that we've built over the decades, and as well as our 7-year track record of investing in the space when there was a lot less capital flowing into climate tech than there is today, we believe that we have the ability to, find opportunities that others may have overlooked or, couldn't access or didn't have the expertise to underwrite. And if you think about the market context that we're in today, the climate crisis is becoming increasingly urgent. The IPCC just issued a pretty damning warning, and economic conditions are complicating this flow of capital to companies that can most effectively reduce emissions. We've got rising interest rates. We had a potential banking crisis on our hands. We still have supply chain woes, and the natural gas that we used to get is, at least in Europe for sure, is being cut off due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So there are many market dislocations, but that's also where you can find opportunity. And so we're excited because we've recently announced the close of our MUUS Convergence Fund 2 and are actively seeking out and investing in visionary companies that are tackling what I would call this truly existential challenge on our hands.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as you describe all of those, challenges in the market. I mean, it is, kudos to you guys, to the entire team. As you mentioned, Convergence Fund 2, a $50 million fund, as I understand it, following on from the initial, $30 million fund. And to be able to close at that level in this market is tremendous, particularly given the, kind of laser focus around, climate and sustainability. And so that's exciting. It's interesting as I look at your portfolio. I mean, it seems very focused, obviously. But even within that, I noticed, companies like Bright Night, Dispatchable Power, Nautilus Labs, decarbonizing ocean-going fleets, Monarch, an EV tractor, kind of. It's an interesting array. It must be an incredibly interesting sector to work in. So on a day-to-day basis, Kavita, you're focused on those earlier stage companies. Is that's the primary focus?
Yeah, that's the primary focus. And I want to go back quickly to something you said about the capital raising environment, which I think was very interesting at the time. We had 2021 was a phenomenal year for private markets, and we had significant paper markups within many VC allocations. And so some investors felt over allocated to venture capital. And so how we were able to narrate the fundraising process and why this is the greatest opportunity of our generation, grounded in the best available science to inform our thesis, was really important. The fact that we understand the entrepreneurial journey stemming from Michael's experience as an entrepreneur as well as others on our team. And we had an interesting barbell of investors. Some were climate experts who felt positively about the thematics within our portfolio that we're allocating, where small pieces of capital can really move the needle for companies and the emissions stemming from those industries. And on the other side, you have successful entrepreneurs or people skilled in their industries who are now turning and looking at, I want to dip my toe into climate, but I'm not sure where to begin. And I want a partner who can bring me along on that learning journey. And we were lucky also to have some of our portfolio founders as well invest in the fund. So I think those factors in this environment was a very positive sign for what we've built so far. And in terms of, you were asking about some opportunities within the portfolio and how we kind of invest across a broad swath of industries. I think in general, we always look for opportunities where technology can accelerate a climate solution faster. And this means that we're meeting the timeliness of the moment of decarbonization. We need to decarbonize by 50% by 2030. That's coming closer and closer. But also betting on high moat businesses that can accumulate enterprise value at a rate that's exciting to venture investors. And if we're successful, we can attract more capital into climate solutions, which is the ultimate goal. I'll maybe touch on one or two thematics that we've been seeing within climate tech. The first one is just, we need to green the grid. Everyone can have an electric vehicle, but unless when you plug that car in, the grid is drawing from renewable energy resources, we won't be fully decarbonized. And so utilities in their previous model controlled all of the energy sources and controlled when it was dispatched. And now you, as an EV owner, get to control when you're charging from the grid, which is a huge load, or when you're sending electrons back into the grid, which utilities have never had to deal with before. And so we need to perfect this visibility and the ability to control all of these new assets, distributed energy resources coming onto the grid. And so one of the companies that we've invested in, called Utilidata, is applying machine learning to energy meters, and they're able to produce real-time insights that allow utilities to run more efficiently, to utilize these distributed energy resources optimally, and also to detect anomalies and make sure that everyone has a secure energy situation, that you'll never run out of power in your home, there won't be an outage for a long period of time, things like that. And so Utilidata has announced a partnership with NVIDIA on developing a new smart grid chip powered by their AI and embedded into Utilidata's smart meters. So we think this collaboration will really be game-changing for the industry, and they've just announced their first 500-meter rollout in the United States. So excited to see where that one will go.
That's great. Yeah, it's interesting. I did take a look at Utilidata, and what struck me about what they're doing, I spent quite a long period of time early in my career in the telecom space, and there was a period of time where services were essentially hindered from progress because the telecoms networks were just not capable of supporting the use cases. And it seemed to me that Utilidata is applying a similar type of approach in as much as there's obviously huge change taking place in terms of how people both generate energy and consume energy. And I guess the two-way nature of that, which maybe isn't a model that most grids support today. And it struck me that they were going through a similar type of process as many telecoms networks, needed to go through in order to fully unleash the power of their networks, of their grids, if you will. So yeah, super interesting. And can you talk about any of the more recent investments that you've made from, let's say, from the new fund?
Yeah, definitely. So we've seen most money within climate tech go into transportation, food and ag, and energy. But there are certain areas of climate tech that are significant drivers of emissions, but have not yet received the attention in terms of dollars invested that they should. And so we see that as a huge opportunity for us to find attractive investments, but also really move the needle in an area where capital is not yet flowing in significant amounts. And so one area that we're really excited about is the building space. And I guess one company I'll talk about is Harvest Thermal. They're doing advanced thermal controls for building heat, both air space heating as well as water heating. And Harvest Thermal is led by a female CEO, Jane Melia, and they were just named to Fast Company's 2023 list of world's most innovative companies for its breakthrough HVAC system that uniquely allows for load shifting. So in case users aren't excited and nerded out about this space, Harvest Thermal is using a heat pump technology, and a heat pump is similar to what's found in a refrigerator or an air conditioner. You extract heat from a source, such as the surrounding air, and then amplifies and transfers the heat to where it's needed. And since we're transferring heat instead of generating it, it's more efficient than conventional heating technologies like an electric heater or a boiler, making it cheaper to run and less emissions intense. Harvest Thermal is using a heat pump as well as a hot water tank and is using that as a thermal battery. So it's heating up the water when renewables are the most available and the cheapest. Let's say at noon when the sun is highest in the sky, you're going to load up the hot water tank. And when you come home at 5 p.m., you want to run your dishwasher, you want to do your laundry, you want to use all of these sources of energy within your house. Instead of using natural gas or whatever else it is, you can use this thermal battery to discharge from Harvest Thermal system to do both space heating for comfort as well as the hot water heating. And so typically utilities can be a little nervous about heat pumps that don't have this hot water battery because it's drawing a lot of energy from the grid when everyone else is drawing energy from the grid at 5 p.m. when you get home. And so Harvest Thermal is changing that paradigm by having this, we call it load shifting capability, to charge when no one else is charging and when the energy is the cleanest, and discharge when you need it the most. So they're California based, they're already deploying units, and we're really excited about their journey.
That's great. Yeah. So literally, well, I guess the clue is in the name, harvesting the thermal power, and that's focused on residential entirely.
Yes, they're focused on residential applications today. They're doing retrofits for now, and then at scale, they're working on some partnerships with home builders to really scale it up and looking at what the next markets are going to be within the United States. Yeah,
amazing. Well, congrats to them on that award. That's great, and obviously, it sounds like a good investment for you guys. Any other standouts or any recent investments that you want to give a shout out to before?
Excitingly, just yesterday or maybe 2 days ago now. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that because I don't know when the podcast is going to air, but I'll say Excitingly, recently, one of our companies announced their C round of funding, and they're
Yeah.
Canadian-based 3E Nano. They're at the intersection of material science and building energy efficiency. So I'm sure many of us have sat by the window, working, reading a book, and as the sun is rising higher and higher in the sky, we start feeling warm, and then we turn the air conditioning on. This uses a significant amount of energy within our home, and it's because our windows aren't efficient. They should be letting all of the light in and reflecting all of the heat out. But today, our windows have low R value, and so they're not able to reflect that heat as much as it should. And 3E Nano has really found a extremely cost-effective way to add a coating onto these windows that is survivable in natural air. It doesn't need argon gas or anything special like typical triple pane windows do in order to achieve a very high energy efficiency and make you more comfortable, bring down your energy bills, and use less emissions. And I think within the home, I think 30% of heating and cooling emissions would be saved if we just had more efficient windows. So it's in architecture, they call it the passive movement. And this is one thing that you install, you set it and forget it. There's no turning it on or off. And it just saves you so much money over time. And triple pane windows are expensive, so no one's installing it. And these guys have found a way to achieve that triple pane window heat reflectivity at the cost of what we're paying for windows today. And they already have collaborations with very significant commercial partners. So we're excited to really help them on the scale up there.
That's great. That's great. And just one other, this is a, I guess, a personal favorite of mine looking through your portfolio is Monarch, that EV tractor company. Just check it out online. But I'm going to make a personal confession here. My wife doesn't understand this, but I will at some point in my life own a tractor, despite the fact I don't own any land, at least apart from where my house is. But I have this obsession with owning a tractor. And I'm also, I have a separate personal interest, as it happens, in sustainability and managing climate change, which I won't talk about now, but that fits the mold perfectly. So it's an EV tractor. I like the way they put driver optional in there. It looks like it's got some self-driving capability as well. But incredible, roster of investments. Obviously, we wish you guys the very best of luck with the new fund as well.
And
so just going,
they have their Monarch will give you an excuse to visit Napa Valley in California. They have significant partnerships and rollout there. So if you ever visit Napa, you can check out a Monarch tractor.
I can indulge two of my favorite pastimes. So drinking wine and driving tractors, and maybe not necessarily at the same time, but great. Well, just to kind of switch gears a little bit, Kavita. So we've got a little bit of background on MUUS. When you stepped into this space, first of all, coming into a sector which right now is underrepresented in a number of areas, right, from an equality and diversity perspective. There's a very low percentage of women in private capital, certainly in venture capital. Can you just talk about, let's say, your experience to date? Any observations? I know you have some affiliations with women in venture capital, etc. But just interested in your experience and maybe any thoughts that you have about that for our audience.
Definitely, I think I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here, and the generation above me really made headways and kind of broke barriers and glass ceilings, and so I am now a beneficiary of all of that work, which I really value and appreciate, and has really paved the way for the world that we have today. Though we're still improving, I do want to recognize the work of those who came before me. I think, still today there's a very tiny proportion of women and people of color who are receiving VC funding. And we always ask ourselves, why is this? It really comes down to network. It's easier to invest in a known quantity. And at such an early stage of growth, team is everything. You want someone who is experienced in the industry that they're selling into. And if you think about some of the industries that I'm investing in, real estate, construction, utilities, think about who the executives are and were at those firms and what profile they fit. So that is the crux of the issue. I think the way to get past that is to really have a diverse team. And our investment team, I'm really proud to say, is our firm at large is half men, half women. And your deals are a product of the network of the team members. So by having this diverse team, we're fortunate to have a diverse pipeline of companies and amazing founders in the climate tech space. So that's really our secret sauce for getting there. And I was really excited that my first investment when I joined the firm in Nth Cycle was in a badass female entrepreneur, Megan O'Connor, working in the metals and mining industry on a new way of recycling batteries that's less carbon emissions intense. And to be a trailblazer in that industry is amazing and inspiring. And she is just so practical and laser focused on the vision to getting it done. So I would say the diverse entrepreneurs are out there, and it's not just women, it's people of color, it's immigrants, it's everything. We need everyone coming at this problem with their unique perspective, and the more perspectives we have in this space, the better returns will be. That's our thesis, and I think that's played out both in public equity markets as well as data in VC as well. So we're on our way. We're making progress. We're not there yet, but MUUS is going to be part of the solution.
Yeah, that's great. Is that Nth Cycle, by the way? Is that Megan's company or?
Nth Cycle, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Very interesting. I took a look at that. That's absolutely critical. I mean, this is looking at I guess the life cycle of things that we take for granted, our cell phones, EV batteries. I mean, anything that contains these precious minerals, right? And
right.
What that life cycle looks like, that's their core kind of focus.
Exactly. The thematic at large is around energy security. In a world where solar panels and batteries are now providing the electrons flowing to your house and not natural gas, coal, or oil, metals security is becoming energy security. And so minerals such as copper, nickel, lithium that are key to the hardware powering the clean energy transition are becoming paramount. And we don't have enough. There is a finite quantity of these resources. And so Nth Cycle has a technology that can extract those critical minerals from used end product, as well as mine tailings, which is the part of the substance that miners say, okay, this doesn't have enough quantity of valuable stuff in it for us to extract. And so we're not going to worry about it. They're taking these sources and, extracting where we couldn't extract before, as well as making sure we have a circular loop and maintaining the quantity of these minerals that are in circulation today in a way that reduces carbon emissions significantly from the way that we're doing this today.
Yeah, that's incredible. I have to say, I when I look at my I am a gadget person. I enjoy my gadgets, but one thing that I think is incredibly wasteful when I look at the drawers of, and I mean drawers plural, that I have at home of old phones, or everything from, this is dating me a little bit, but from kind of Palm Pilot to BlackBerry to iPhone, and I still have them. but they all contain, these precious minerals and I'm sure recyclable components that if I take the time, I really should be getting them back into that recycle loop. But yeah, that's great to see that kind of work taking place, and to be able to support that must be incredibly gratifying. Not just for the company, but for you personally to be involved in it, given your proclivity for sustainability and everything else there, your career. So just kind of looking forward a little bit, Kavita, are there any trends that you're seeing? I saw that we talked a little bit earlier about your relationship with MIT, and you helped judge the first round of the MIT Climate and Energy Prize recently. I just saw that in your social feed. As you look forward, and look at some of the emerging themes, what are you seeing out there? And just as an aside, was there anything interesting in that judging process that you thought this makes you feel even better about the next generation of entrepreneurs entering the space?
Absolutely. The amount of innovation and encouragement to go off the beaten track and create something new for the world at MIT, I think is unparalleled. I also just went to ARPA-E last week in DC, which is the Department of Energy's Innovation Summit that brings together industry, academia, government, startups, and investors. And I was very optimistic that this year was ARPA-E's biggest one yet. There were over 400 booths talking about the latest and greatest technologies across industries. And I'm optimistic that with all of these groups collaborating, we can really be proud of our actions in this decade. I think a couple of things on my mind in terms of opportunities for future innovation. I would love to see opportunities in the methane reduction or methane to value space. Methane also contributes to global warming. It doesn't stay in the atmosphere for as long, but while it is in the atmosphere, it is significantly more potent than CO2, something like 80 times more potent over a 20-year period. And so
Wow.
Now, when we have this target 7 years from now to reduce emissions by 50%, talk about moving the needle. If there's something in that space, it would be hugely significant for making sure that we're bending that curve appropriately. And the second thing that I'm excited about is new building materials to replace concrete, to replace steel. I find this space fascinating as well, and there's several companies working on it. So I'm excited to see where those two go.
Yeah, that's great. And if you were to be critical of the sector right now, I mean, are things moving quickly enough? There is an impending deadline for sure, and we have a very outspoken, actually an Irish lady, Mary Robinson, who sits on the Council of Elders and is very outspoken on climate change. Former president of Ireland, and I mean the drumbeat, I guess that's coming from Mary and her contemporaries are that things aren't moving quickly enough. I mean, what's your sense, given that you're out there engaging with the companies that hopefully will help to accelerate this? What's your sense of that?
Overarchingly, in the Paris Climate Agreement, our target is to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius and definitely below 2. Today, we've locked in at least 1.1 degrees Celsius of warming. And so the deadline is upon us, and the actions we take in the next 7 years will be very significant. However, I think we do have the tools today in order to solve this issue, and this is not talked about enough. My area that I think we can improve on is pragmatic optimism. For example, the US's Inflation Reduction Act took us to 42% estimated GHG reduction by 2030, with all of the knock-on effects and passage of that landmark piece of legislation. And our advisor, Jesse Jenkins, did the Rapid Energy Policy Analysis Project, repeat project that showed this trajectory. And so that's huge. We're at 42%. We need to get to 50, but we're a lot of the way there for a significant global emitter. The second thing I would point to is we've already peaked in terms of fossil fuel usage. People don't realize that. That is huge. That's so encouraging. And it's because wind and solar are the cheapest sources of power in 95% of the world. That's incredible. And we have reached that in a short period of time. Now today, electric vehicles are on their way to reaching price parity with gas-fueled vehicles. So my message is that, yes, we need to take action, but we can do this, and we are doing this.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. I have to say, I literally this morning, on my way into the office, I heard an announcement on the radio. It was a European, I think the European Union made an announcement around the banning of, fossil fuel, or rather diesel or petrol-powered cars, but by 2035. And my initial reaction was, that's quite a long time away, and a lot can happen during that time, which is very negative. So it's encouraging to hear that there's certainly other things that are moving at a faster pace than that. Just as we kind of come into close, Kavita, you talked a couple of times about, or mentioned a couple of times, the fact that you've come from immigrant parents. Obviously presented with great opportunities, but to what extent has that kind of influenced you as a person is kind of the first part of the question. And then the second is, when you think about success for you at MUUS, and indeed the success of the firm, what are the key determinants? And I'm guessing that's obviously a key part of your motivation, but what would the key determinants of success look like for you and for MUUS?
Definitely. I think, my parents were a huge influence on my life, and the two main things that I got, as I think many people do from immigrant parents, is that hard work is paramount. That's how you manifest lucky situations. If you work hard enough, suddenly luck will come your way. And the second is just to value being different and value my unique perspective. I've been in many classrooms as well as office conference rooms in my life where I'm the only person from my background, but that just makes my perspective all the more unique and interesting, that I have something to say that no one else in the room can. And so just remembering that is really important, especially within climate tech, where it's cutting across so many industries and policy areas, public and private, research, academic, real estate. We talked about real estate, utilities, transportation. There's so many people who need to come into this space with their unique perspective. So if you are passionate about climate, if you are a creative and independent thinker, find your niche, because there is a space for you within the climate tech world. And this is, as I said, the problem and opportunity of our generation. And the more the merrier, and your perspective is valued. That would be my message to all of your listeners.
Yeah, that's great. I saw you smiling broadly as you were talking about your parents. Clearly a very strong influence, and I guess supporting you, through your education and your career. Was there anything in their either their background or the support for you that pushed you? I guess it is a cliche, because it's true that the children of immigrant parents do tend to have a much harder work ethic. To what extent do you kind of credit that for, let's say, your progress in this area?
Yeah, I think I'm smiling because we just made a video for my dad's 65th birthday, and I credit him with making me a confident risk taker. He would always push me to try water skiing, try going down this moguls, this double black XYZ. And I think certain people are taught to play it safe, don't be too much of a risk taker, keep your head down. And my father really pushed me to, you can do this. You just need to try it. Believe in yourself. Don't let any path be inaccessible to you. And while that was helpful on the ski slopes, I've also applied it in my life and my career. And, you know, when you think that the possibilities for yourself are endless, you'll be very surprised how much you can accomplish.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful to hear. Yeah, and I mean the podcast is The People of Private Capital, and we are keen to understand the motivations of the individual, and it's often these external factors that impact us personally, and of course that carries on professionally. So great to hear that. So just in closing, is there anything, Kavita, that people might find surprising about the space that you work in, or your area of focus, that if you're unfamiliar with the sector, it would be interesting to share?
Definitely. I think people view tackling climate change, or I'll phrase it as the energy transition, as what sometimes can be a partisan issue, especially in the United States. And the conservative is the right, the liberals are on the left. And people often think that the conservatives or the red states are opposed to the energy transition. And I want people to know that in this Venn diagram, there are significant areas of overlap. And today, red states account for the highest per capita climate tech investment and the largest share of clean energy production in the United States. So this is not a partisan issue. And there are significant areas where the energy system that we have had for decades can be used for the future. And I'll give the example of coal plants. Coal plants are huge emitters. Shutting it down would be a great thing for the environment. And they can be repurposed. And those who worked at these coal plants, who were and have been an integral part of the energy backbone of the U.S., can continue to do so. These sites have key infrastructure for energy or industrial uses. They have connection to the electric grid. They often have a water source. They're close to rail lines in order to transport material. And so there's significant opportunity to use the infrastructure and the skilled people that we have in order to turn to the energy transition of the future. And so while sometimes this issue can seem contentious, I think there's several areas of collaboration, and we're seeing that even today.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see. I mean, and one of the things that strikes me, and I get to have the pleasure of talking to people like yourself, many other industries and representatives who are out there backing entrepreneurial spirit to tackle these difficult problems. I mean, it's really encouraging to see what's happening in this space. There's a lot that's written that's very negative. I guess the underlying narrative, is you've got to try and drive urgency in people. I guess there's a counter argument that sometimes you can shout so loud that you're not heard, and so there's a middle ground where I think people can kind of support positive progress towards the objective, and certainly heard a lot of that today, Kavita, with what you guys are doing at MUUS. And so in closing, if people want to connect with you, Kavita, what's the best way to do that? You're on LinkedIn, I believe?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect with anyone who's interested in keeping the conversation going.
Okay, very good. And they can learn more about you guys at MUUSclimate.com.
Exactly.
That's MUUS Climate.com. Great. Well, Kavita, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. We didn't see any appearance from Tofu, who I understand is your Westie. I was expecting to see him pop up somewhere on camera, but he's obviously he or she is being very well behaved.
He's
but
a
thanks
little
once
camera
again.
shy. That's why, I
All
haven't
right,
been able
okay.
to make him Instagram famous yet.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, thanks once again, Kavita. Wish you and indeed the entire team at MUUS all the success with the latest fund. And thanks once again for joining us on the People of Private Capital podcast.
Thanks, Bertie.
Thanks a lot.